Hi guys, my name is Sel. Welcome to Wait, Let Me Think, a journal podcast where I get to open up, reflect, and shamelessly ramble as I do anyway. Did it? I think it did.
Hi.
Welcome to another
episode
I think my voice just broke.
of...
What is this podcast called? We're doing great already. We're doing very well. I literally have no idea what this podcast is called. Wait, let me think. Wow! What a perfect name. I've truly chosen the perfect name because I do not think. I've just woken up from a 3-hour nap. Quite late in the afternoon. I was gonna say interview. And that's where my head is at right now. But I've had dinner. I've had sustenance. I feel a little bit more alive. It's a golden hour right now, and the sky is beautiful from my room. I thought I'd open the windows up a bit. We can have the birds joining in on our conversation. But today I wanted to talk a little bit about making friends, either super trivial or super frightening. One of my followers, somebody found me through YouTube and then found my Instagram, asked me about, making friends in university, and I've had a lot of questions actually about like people being shy, and especially for foreigners, immigrants, international students, people who don't know what the Dutch culture is like. This little podcast is going to be based on my experience in the last couple of months being in Hong Kong for my study abroad and also studying in the Netherlands. I can't say that this will apply to every person and every culture, but it's been pretty useful for me. I thought I'd talk a little bit about making friends because it's been a pretty long journey for me. My friendships haven't really been deep growing up because I've always found it really hard to open up to people. And I think it's mostly based off of fear. I didn't really know how people would take it. But it's quite funny because I've, reconnected with people from high school, from middle school, from my youth. And since I've gone to university and learned how to open up to these people, I've gone back to my old friendships and I've seen how they have also deepened just because I've deepened my understanding of what a friendship should be. I guess I've just practiced trust better, and I've allowed people more chances, and I'm more open to them, and therefore that translates to the rest of my relationships. And it's been really, really eye-opening to, to see the people that I used to feel lonely with, or the people that I used to feel awkward with, become really good friends of mine. And to realize that it was probably just a sort of self-hindrance, my limiting belief that, people won't be trustworthy, people won't understand me, I'm too weird, or I'm too different, or, people just don't get it. These are all things that I've told myself growing up, and those are the things that I genuinely believe have stopped me from making meaningful connections with people. So this changed when I went to university because I had a wee bit of a breakdown. I think this was like first year when everything was just beginning to be a little bit too much. I went to a student psychologist. And one of the things that really bothered me was the fact that I was, feeling like I did in high school. And I was putting a lot on the friendships and connections I wanted to make in college because I didn't feel like I really, really found my people when I was growing up. So I thought, well, if I'm going to go and study something that I really love and I'll find like-minded people, then I have to connect with them, right? And if you don't follow me on anything, or if you've never really seen my other stuff, you might not know that I'm pretty active with politics and theories pertaining to, gender, sexuality, race, class, colonization, things like that. Those are what interest me, and those are how I built my values growing up, and or at least, in high school. And a lot of people didn't really vibe with that or didn't really quite get it yet. Now it's very different. Now a lot of people are active in politics, even on Instagram, especially in light of the Black Lives Matter movement and resources being shared around. You know, a lot of people understand more things. But I was definitely feeling, I don't know, not singled out, because I had great people around me. I just didn't feel like we were vibing to the utmost potential, and that was really frustrating to me. And I remember going to a student psychologist during this sort of breakdown, and I was like, yeah, I don't know, I feel like I just expect people to be perfect, you know? I like, not perfect in themselves, but perfect for me and perfectly fitting. And the psychologist said, well, you know, do you expect yourself to be perfect? And I think that's sort of what triggered me to start thinking about, why do I put these expectations from people? Why do I identify with people's decisions so deeply, you know? Firstly, the people around you can determine what you are like, you know. I do believe that there's some value to the saying that, like, you are the sum of, I don't know, the closest people around you or something like that. But at the same time, I was putting these unrealistic expectations for people to always make the right decision, to say the right things, etc., because I was expecting myself to do that, and it's just not realistic. We're always in flow. We're always fluid as people. We're moving from one point to another, and it's an upside down roller coaster, wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, Jeremy bear me type thing. And why do we expect ourselves to be finished products all the time, and why do we expect other people to be finished products at the same time? We just need to be honest with ourselves, and we need to be fully accepting of all of our flaws, and then we can be accepting of other people's too, because we'll understand that, you know, people are, for lack of a better word, enigmas. I don't know. Being friends with someone means accepting all of that. And this is getting really Disney deep, and let's move on, shall we? But yeah, that's just a bit of the stuff that you gotta keep in mind when you want to make meaningful connections, because it was a lesson that I had to learn, so I'm just sharing. I'm gonna now move on to the tips that I've collected, and these are things that if you're a little bit confused on how to start a conversation with someone, if you're not really used to you know, being the charismatic person, or being the confident person, or being the one that seeks out other people, if you don't really consider yourself an extrovert, this might be helpful for you. Number one, which I think ties in quite well with the advice that I had just given, is to get over yourself. This is huge. This is huge for someone who overthinks, for someone who hyperreacts. If you've been bullied before, if you've been in uncomfortable social situations before, if you have social anxiety, it's very, very common for people to get really, really stuck in their heads. You know, you're thinking a mile a minute. We're like, does this look awkward? Does this look funny? Am I being too loud? Am I not saying enough? Am I being too quiet? Am I being too weird? Are people even interested in me? Am I talking too much? Nobody's gonna care. You know what? Sometimes a bit of tough love can work. And when I get like that, I just tell myself to shut up and get over myself, because nobody cares. That's the secret to life. Everybody is wrapped up in themselves, or they just don't care. If you are with people who also have social anxiety, they are wrapped up in themselves. And if you are with extroverts who are completely fine in social settings, they will not care at all. And even if they do, even if they go like, oh, that was a bit weird to say in their heads about what you've said, we've all had that moment with other people too. And we move on. We get over it. Most of the time, we don't go, well, this person is horrible, disgusting, we're going to cross them off of our list. We just move on. We're like, well, that was bit of a funny interaction, and then we give it another chance, or we leave it at that. People do not stay up late at night thinking about that embarrassing thing that you said 2 years ago. So why should you? What does it matter? I think that when people are nervous with socializing, there tends to be a pattern of not really forgiving yourself, and not, again, accepting that kind of mistake, that kind of flaw that we perfectionists tend to not want to love, want to, you know, acknowledge, or want to just be like, okay, that's fine. I've said many things where I'm like, oh God, that was super weird. And then I just let it go, because there's really no point. Absolutely no one is thinking about you. They will get over you. You are not that important. I'm sorry to say. But you aren't, and neither are they. That's why you also don't dwell on the small awkward things that people say. You probably can't remember the last awkward interaction you had. And they probably won't remember you either, and that's a good sign. That's a good thing. When that tends to happen, you can either acknowledge it, where you're like, oh, that was a bit weird to say. Just do it right away. Do it with confidence. Let it be known that you are self-aware and that was kind of funny. You can laugh it off. Or you just move on. Move on to the next topic, because people aren't going to spend too much time thinking about it anyway. Okay, so for the next tip, this ties in with starting conversations with people. So I made some of my closest friends, actually, during orientation week at university. And I carried around a vlogging camera, which was super awkward to do. It was very intimidating. I felt trashy, tacky, and horrible every time I turned it on. But one, it was my job, so I had to. I had gotten a job at the marketing department at my university to make vlogs, and I was going to document the orientation week. So I was like, I got to get over myself. But also, it made for a great conversation starter, because then people were like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, what do you do? And then I could explain that this was one of my hobbies, these were my interests. And when you talk about vlogging, you open up talking about like social media, you end up talking about who your favorite people to watch are. People become very supportive, or they might judge and they'll be like, oh, why do you do that? And then, you can explain even more about why you like it. But one of the best things to do, especially with girls, I think is much easier, but this works for everyone, is to start with a compliment. Let it be genuine. And if you actually want it to be their friend, I think you're going to vibe with them, and there's probably going to be something to compliment someone about. And this is a tactic that I've seen a lot of people in my studies use, and I've adopted it, and it works every single time. I usually talk about someone's clothes because that's just what I'm most attracted to. But once I've started having classes with like strangers, people who weren't necessarily from my studies, or I didn't meet at orientation week, and people speak up, I love people who are outspoken, who are great leaders, who speak their mind. I usually then come up to them and tell them I love, their opinions on this. I totally agree with them, and I love when they speak up. And people always light up when you do this, and people are always super excited to talk about, what you're wearing, or how you've made them feel. And so I guess maybe going to university, accepting compliments would be a good thing to practice, because people might start doing that with you to start conversations. But also, this pushes people to be their best selves. It pushes me to actually want to speak up and really speak on what I think about certain things in the classroom. And is it still called a classroom when it's university? I feel like it is. I haven't been to actual class in a while. But it makes people feel really good, and it's really made me come out of my shell with the way I dress, and because people are also drawn to others who have that kind of confidence to do that. So it's really building yourself up, and it's building other people up. Okay, next thing. This goes hand in hand with the compliment, right? So you've come up to someone, you've given them a compliment. Next step is to be the first to put your hand out and introduce yourself. This shows that you're serious about making friends with them. This shows that you're open to them. This shows that you are willing to continue the conversation, and you are willing to make a connection. Sometimes it can surprise people, especially in like a setting where everyone's kind of like young and new, and we're not really professionals yet, but it's always really great when you put your hand out. I mean, I guess now with COVID, maybe not so much, but it shows confidence. And people always give you their attention right away. Once you do that, they give you their name. You can repeat it if you like to make sure that you remember it. But they will almost always like face their body to yours. Now they're focused on you, and you can really build that connection. This also works really well when you are in a new class. Usually you're in a new class like every semester, sometimes every period. So every few months you'll be with new people, and you might be sitting next to someone you don't know. You can always crack a joke about the homework and the reading. Those two are great. They always work well with people. The next one is pretty similar to, getting over yourself, is the fact that just because they're not your friend yet doesn't mean they're your enemy. People think that just because you don't know them, they're going to be on the offense and they're going to be judging you. They're going to be overly critical about you. None of these things are true, especially in a setting where there are new people, like, a new school, new university, new workplace. People are just excited to see new people, and they either want to get to know you or they don't. If they didn't, they would not show any interest in you, and they would not speak to you. If they're already coming up to you, or if they're already reciprocating when you come up to them, that means that they're probably willing to get to know you, or they're willing to just hold a small conversation with you. Not like there's no reason to be scared, because I think our fears are completely valid, it's a social jungle out there. But if they're not your friend yet, that means they probably are going to be, or they aren't. Them being your enemy is the least likely option, because you're going to have to piss them off pretty badly, or they're going to have to piss you off pretty badly, which is like, if you're just having small talk, it's probably not going to go there, so you're most likely safe. And I think that's something to keep in mind, especially when you get nervous. The next one, which goes hand in hand with being nervous, is to be comfortable with silence. This is a hard one, and this is something I still am practicing. I had like a birthday party thing I think last week, so a couple of days ago, and I was in a pretty big social setting for what I've been through in the last few months, and I remember just wanting to carry the conversation. For me, I can either shut down or be very domineering, and when I'm comfortable, I'm just chill, and I'm listening, and I'm talking, and it's like a good equal amount of give and take, at least in my opinion. My friends can vouch for me if I talk too much. They can tell you whether or not I do. To me, when I'm relaxed, it's a good balance, it's a good amount. But when I'm tense, I tend to overtalk, or I try to overcompensate for other people who might be quiet in the group. And this just comes from like understanding that other people can be nervous, and I don't want anyone to feel awkward, so I'm like trying to carry the weight for everybody. But most of the time, the silence is kind of healthy. When you're like in a big group and then you kind of run out of things to talk about as like a whole, when that happens, I usually just chill out, especially if it's not a one-on-one conversation. Chances are someone else is going to bring something up, or someone who's quiet is going to finally have something to say, because then they finally feel like there is a space for someone to speak up, I notice that there are certain people who are completely fine with silence, and they won't be like, getting all stressed out trying to think of the next thing to say. They just sit there and they're like, okay, there's the silence now. And I've really found inspiration in those people, and I'm trying to learn to do that more often. And it's just nice to not, put that kind of pressure on yourself to make sure that the conversation's going well all the time. I've had a few times where it would be a one-on-one interaction and someone's like, I completely forgotten what I want to say. And then it can be pretty awkward if you don't know them, because there's like a few beats of silence. Sometimes I'll just say, it's okay, I'll give you time. And I've been doing that quite a bit now, where if someone's trying to gather their thoughts, I just speak on it. I acknowledge it. I tell them that's completely fine. You're safe with me. I'm just gonna let you take your time and take up your space. I think that's also like pretty interesting when it can get awkward, and then somebody will have the guts to be like, oh, well, this is awkward, and then they laugh about it, because everybody's experiencing it at the same time usually. You're probably not the only one who's thinking of the silence, so it's gonna be a-okay. No need to panic. Okay, my final advice would be to start like you're already friends. This is a good one, like cracking the joke, also tying in with the fact that just because they're not your friend yet doesn't mean they're your enemy. Come up to someone like you've known them for years. Not in like the content of what you're saying, because you don't know how people are going to respond to getting super personal and open right away, but in the way that you're saying it. I come up to a lot of people and I'm like, girl, I love that. I'm already hyping them up. I find that people love to be complimented, people love to be hyped up, and I love hyping people up. And that is a great way to show that you are supportive of them and that you are, not on the offense, not on the defense, you're trying to be their friend. And that's what I just usually do. I'm like, if we're at a party and someone's playing a really good song or they're dancing really well, I'll just like come up to them as if I know that I'm like, you're rocking it, you're doing great. If I make a joke, I'm making a joke as if I know they're gonna laugh. Like I will bring up the homework thing and I'm like, oh god, don't you just hate it? And it's like, you don't necessarily need to be like, hi, my name is so and so. There's this like sort of script that you're supposed to use to introduce yourself with. Forget that, go right into the good stuff where you're being positive with each other, where you're having a good time together. Most of the time the other person's also like worrying about how they're going to introduce themselves to you, and it's really not necessary. We could totally skip that part and just vibe right away. That was also a thing that I always questioned. I'm like, why aren't people like getting it? Why is it always so awkward? Because I feel like I can create a good vibe with my friends, but when it's someone new, I feel like they're not really getting my personality. And then I was like, well, that's because I'm treating them like they're strangers. If you come up to them like they're your friends already, and if they like your vibe, they're gonna want to surround themselves with your positivity. Okay, I think those are most of the tips that I have for you. This is pretty interesting to talk about. I feel like it's all pretty soft stuff, but really important, and not a lot of people talk about how difficult it is to make friends, especially when you're new, But I hope this helps in some way. I hope this allows you to try and make more connections with the people around you, because I guarantee you are surrounded by a lot of interesting people. You just gotta be open to their energies, and you've got to be willing to hold out a branch for them, Okay, I hope that you all have a great day wherever you are, whatever time it is. I hope you're staying healthy. I hope you're staying safe. Have a nice laugh, have a nice cry for me today. And yeah, I will probably talk to you in the next one. Thank you for listening. Bye!